All right, so welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. I'm here with a dear friend. I consider her very advanced in her spiritual journey. She's visited and lived in many different countries all over the world. She's studied under different teachers in Hong Kong. She's lived in Japan. She's just an amazing human.
Thank you.
And I'm really happy to have you on, Marija. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Marija Minic. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. My parents immigrated to Toronto in 1973 from what was then called Yugoslavia. So technically my first language was Serbian because my parents really didn't speak much English by the time I was born. And so that was interesting, having Slavic background, but being born and raised in a Western part of the world, in Canada. And yeah, I mean, my first, I guess, spiritual sort of upbringing was through the Serbian Eastern Orthodox Church, and which I still very much appreciate. I like the very pagan nature of a lot of the rituals. Like, for example, we celebrated Christmas on the 7th of January, and, you know, by burning oak branches and saying however many sparks, that's how much love and peace and, you know, it was just kind of a different form of manifestation.
Oh, that's beautiful. I didn't know that was part of the religion and the traditions.
Yeah.
I actually was raised Russian Orthodox myself, and I was born in Russia, and I came over when I was 4 years old. So we have we were neighbors at some point, you know.
For sure.
And
awesome.
yeah, it's really cool. So you started out, and so you had mentioned to me before we started the podcast, 2004 was a big life-changing year for you, right?
Yeah. So I kind of went to Asia on a whim because it was really popular in the late 90s, early 2000s to go to Japan or Korea or China or Taiwan and teach English. So I signed up for something called the JET program, the Japanese Exchange and Teaching Program, and that was amazing. I lived in a very rural part of the country in Niigata Prefecture, which is basically known for its rice, rice and salmon and sake because of the rice. And it was just really eye-opening to be immersed in a country where I look completely different from everyone else. They speak a completely different language, because European languages, you know, you can maybe suss out here and there what this and what means here and there, right? But Asia is just a different ballgame, you know? And then just experiencing the kindness, and then also a completely different faith. Like, they're Buddhist and Shinto primarily there.
Okay.
So visiting these Buddhist temples and Shinto shrines and stuff, that was really sort of, you know, oh, this is really fascinating. But I never got
eye-opening, right?
Yeah, exactly. I never got fully into it until I moved to Hong Kong after that. And I was just walking down this one neighborhood one day called Wan Chai, and it's called the Kadampa Buddhist Temple, and it's of Tibetan roots, I guess. And there's a smiling, happy monk on a poster, and it's in English, not in Chinese. It says, free meditation classes every Tuesday night.
Oh, wow.
In English. And I was just like, ooh, let's try that out. It's free. And oh my goodness, it was just the most mind-blowing experience. And I started going every single Tuesday until basically I left Hong Kong years later. So
with those meditations, what, because there's so many different ways to meditate, what can you kind of share the way that they dropped you into the meditations and guided you in? Yeah,
he just, you know, like the Anapana meditation with focusing on the breath. So he started us by being, you know, in a comfortable seated position, and he had people even in chairs if they preferred, and just focused on the breath, and then he just kind of used really calm, sweet, soft language, and just bringing us back to our breath. ever so often during the guided meditation. But the way he structured it was he'd start the class with the guided meditation, and then he would read from scriptures, but made it very relevant to everyday life. And he inserted a lot of humor in his talks, and then he had a question and answer session for people who would just wanted more clarity. And then he closed it with another group meditation, and that was 2 hours. It would fly by. Be like, oh my gosh, it started at 7:30. It's like, oh, it's already 9:30? Like, when did that happen, you know?
Yeah, I mean, how was it for you? 2 hours is a long time to meditate. How was it for you the first time and first couple of times that you tried it out?
I really, thanks to him, just dropped right in because he was such a skilled teacher. And I mean, obviously, you know, there would be moments where, oh, my knee hurt. This is, you know, okay, I got to shift around. But whatever, I did shift around, you know. But obviously, with more practice, you can sit without shifting around more and more. You know, so.
Did you find yourself having some intrusive thoughts coming in?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, even now, you know, I've been meditating for 20 years. It's like, oh, what am I making for dinner? Like, oh. Yeah, you know, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So how long did you stay with him and practice with him?
I left Hong Kong in November of 2006, so about 2 years. He actually ended up moving to a different temple in Beijing.
Okay.
And being a teacher there. But we kept in touch over email. And, you know, if something really intense happened in my life, I'd share it with him, and he would be able to reframe it in a perspective like, oh, yeah, well, this and this is happening. Maybe if you looked at that, you know, and it would just make it better kind of thing. So
like give you different perspectives.
Absolutely.
To try to shift it.
Sure. Sure. And I appreciated that.
That's beautiful. Are you still in touch with him?
We haven't spoken in a while, but I've definitely, I feel like universe or spirit has directed me to other teachers. So he was just kind of like my kindergarten, first grade kind of thing.
Right.
And then it was time
the introduction to spirituality,
yes,
right?
Yes. And then it was on to others. So
okay, beautiful. So from that, you found yoga?
Yeah. So a year later, in 2005, there was a huge expat community in Hong Kong.
So for those that don't know, that stands for expatriate,
yes.
right?
So foreigners living in a foreign country, right? And so because Hong Kong was actually given to the British for 99 years by China from, I believe it was 1898 to 1997, because the British Navy was really strong back then, and they kept pirates out of the South China Sea. So as a thank you, the Chinese government gave the harbor, it's a harbor in southern China, Hong Kong, to the British for 99 years. They leased it to them.
Wow.
And so it's still very British. It's kind of like this perfect East meets West place. It's really fascinating. I mean, they drive on the left side of the road there, where there's the rest of China. They drive on the right. You know?
Oh, wow.
So it's still got that British element to it. So as a result, a lot of British expats and other foreigners are still there. A lot of them left when Hong Kong got handed back to China in 1997, but a lot are still there, and the infrastructure is still there to make it very expat friendly. But anyway, so I became friends with this Polish woman and this Norwegian woman, and I just was really drawn to them because they also were spiritual seekers as well. And we went in March of 2005 to India for 7 weeks. Well, Kasia, the Polish girl, she's still there. She married an Indian man.
Oh, wow.
She still lives there.
Wow.
So
she never left.
Yeah, it transformed her life completely. Her kids are half Indian, so yeah, it's awesome. But Anna Marie and I, we ended up at the Shivananda Yoga Ashram, and we studied yoga there, and that was just like, wow. You know, this is like, because prior to that, I was like, oh, it's just an exercise. It's just, glorified stretching. Like,
oh yeah.
But when
that's what most of America, I believe, thinks that's what yoga is, right?
Totally. It's an exercise that keeps you fit,
Yeah, and it's become so commercialized where it's like there's these studios just centered around stretching and that aspect of it, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah. And I realized that in the ashram in India, because we'd be up at the before the crack of dawn but meditating and chanting. And it was like, oh my goodness, there's so much more to the practice than just the asanas, you know? And we had philosophy and jnana yoga, the knowledge aspect of it. And yeah, it was just like, oh my goodness, this is not just an exercise. This is a lifestyle. This is like a way of living.
Yeah. I remember when I first started yoga, I would go like once a week. I was trying out different studios in New Jersey at the time. And one of my buddies was deep in it already. And he told me, he's like, bro, you can't just go once a week. Yeah. This is a dedication. You dedicate your life to it, and you commit to it. It's a way of being. Yeah. And it's not only that, it's like it is life. Yeah, like exactly. Everything is yoga, right? Absolutely. Like yoga means bringing the darkness to the light, or union. Yep. Yeah. And there's so much to it, but yeah, let's get back. We'll circle back to that. So you found this amazing ashram. Which part of India was it in?
It was in South India, in Kerala.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. And the Shivananda ashram, is it Hindu? Is it? Yes. Okay. Do they have a specific deity that they were mostly practicing with?
Shiva and Ganesh. Yeah. Okay. So that was an introduction to them as well. And before it was just like, oh, Shiva's just some blue guy in the sky, just whatever, you know. But then you're like, hang on, they see deities completely differently in Eastern, you know, whether it's Buddhism or Hinduism. They see Shiva as the energy of creation to destruction, and it just happens to be embodied in this blue-looking strong man, you know. But it's really an energy, not an actual being. And we all have Shiva in us because that energy is pervasive and everywhere. So
so a lot of people relate Shiva to the masculine energy and Shakti to the feminine energy.
Yes. And just because of the nature of that energy, not necessarily because it's a blue man, right?
Right.
Yeah. But that was fascinating to me because I'm just like, so it's not just one angry God who reprimands you and makes you feel bad and guilty and shame if you don't follow the rules exactly, you know?
Right.
This is an energy within all of us, and we have the power to tap into it. And we have tools to tap into it if we practice. And it's just like, whoa, you mean I can be God too? No way.
That must have been mind-blowing in that moment, right?
Yeah. And wait, we are God, but maybe we're just like, I like the metaphor of the layers of an onion, you know, because we all have that diamond, pure spiritual center, but we just have to peel the layers through our practice to get to that. And so it's already there. We just got to tap into it. Yeah,
that's amazing. So what were the practices like? Like, what was everyday life like? Like, I've lived in an ashram in Costa Rica, and we were getting up at 4:30 in the morning to meditate. Is that kind of how it was for you guys?
Exactly. And then it was chanting. And then it was, actually, we did karma yoga. So rather than hiring cleaners to keep the ashram clean, everyone participated in sweeping, doing dishes. Just
like sadhana.
Totally. So, but they referred to it as 11 to 12:30 karma yoga.
Karma yoga.
That's
okay.
What they called that. So, as in selfless service. And it was really awesome to have that schedule. And then, we'd eat only twice a day. But we didn't need to eat more. Like, it was just perfectly timed that we weren't hungry.
Well, you were rejuvenating your body with the meditation and recharging. Yes. What most people don't realize, meditation can be very energizing.
Absolutely.
And, it's kind of like plugging your iPhone into the socket, right? It's like, okay, I'm getting charged up, and then I'm ready for the day or for however long until you sit again, right?
Absolutely. It's really powerful. And so that's been really amazing. And so, but I noticed looking back in the last 20 years, how much I've grown. Because when I was a newbie, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm not doing this right. Oh my God, I'm going to just bring in bad karma for thinking all these intrusive thoughts or whatever. And also, I expected perfection. And then I'd also get really frustrated, for example, in a yoga practice. Okay, I totally did the bind on that asana and now I can't. Oh, wait, 2 weeks later I can do it again. So it was like one step forward, a couple steps back, one step forward, a couple steps. But now I realize that's just a normal part of the journey. I'd get so upset with myself if I got the one step, couple steps back, and be like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. Oh my God, I'll never be a spiritual person.
Yeah, that's all programming, right? It's like all that deep programming where it's so deep in society, right? Where it's like, okay, we have to do it exactly perfect. But what most people don't realize is the most successful people in the world have a ton of failures under their belt.
Oh yeah.
I don't know anybody that's really successful that hasn't had dozens and dozens of failures, and the millionaires that I know, they haven't lost millions. People think that you see the stuff on Instagram, you see the stuff on social media, and people think, oh, they got it such a cruising, they're just cruising through life, but there's so much in the background that people aren't showing and sharing and
yeah, exactly. And also, I think we need to understand that growth is not at all linear.
No.
Because we're expecting to go from newbie to expert in a straight line, and that's not how that works at all. One day is amazing, one day sucks, one day is so stellar good, one day's just down in the dumps, worst ever. So you just have to accept that it's just not a linear journey. And then when you can accept that, then it's definitely easier.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I talked about on the last podcast I just recorded is that it's kind of like, you have this drop in vibration, this drop in frequency into the depths of depression and sadness that everybody that I know in the spiritual journey has experienced to some degree or another, right? And then they call it the dark night of the soul. And then from there you start to, I'll speak from my experience. I had to crawl out of it on my own. Nobody was there to hold my hand. Nobody guided me. I didn't know any spiritual teachers at the time. I just knew that I was in the lowest of the low. And I'm a really outgoing, optimistic guy. And the spirit brought me to this place. Yes. And I needed to go down there to experience that, right? Experience how low it can go so I can experience how high it can go.
Absolutely.
And so after crawling out of that, it's that's where the graph kind of started for me. And then as I kept evolving and growing as a human, it was this, right? Where you'd have little, smaller and smaller dips, but it kept moving up as long as I stayed committed to my practice, stayed committed to being a better man, being a better human, and just in general. And whatever that meant to me, right? Yes. Being better could be different for every human. Right. But for me, that was removing those programs, removing those self-limiting beliefs, all those stories that, my mind would tell me. And so some people, there might be some fear, right? Around going back to that place again. And some people might need to go back to that place again. Maybe there's something they need to learn in that space, and so a lot of us in the spiritual community, do what's called shadow work, right? Where we actually intentionally go into those spaces in order to dig out the crap, right? Dig out the stuff that is really limiting us. And a lot of times for me, I didn't even know about a lot of it because it was so pushed down so far. A lot of it was blacked out. I had chunks of my life that I just didn't remember. And it wasn't until I found these different practices myofascial unwinding, things like that, where I actually like tuned into my body, connected with my body, and was able to go into those places and start to bring it to the surface to look at it. Yeah. So that all is crucial.
Yes, it really is, because pretending it doesn't exist, it's going to eventually fester, and it's going to be like a wound you don't attend to. It's going to just fester and pus and get infected, and then you have no choice but to deal with it.
Right.
So the people who spiritually bypass, I like that term, by ignoring their shadows and their dark sides, will be forced to deal with it in one way or another.
Yeah, and usually from seeing my friends and my own experience, it just becomes more difficult and more difficult the more we try to avoid it. Especially because our bodies are starting to vibrate at a higher frequency the more we do it. So it just can't, as our bodies start to crystallize, we just can't hold it in our field anymore. It has to be cleared. Yeah. And so I know for myself, I just went on this whole journey of finding all these different practices like Reiki, Kundalini Yoga, Theta healing, breath work, working with different plant medicines, all those things combined, and more, integrated energy therapy, things like that, really started to bring all that up and gave me tools to work with it, you know? Right. And it's like we have a responsibility as the ones that were awakened, right? That term, that it leaves a bitter taste in some people's mouth, but I'll just use it for the time being. But for us, for those of us that crawled out of that dark spot and chose to get out of it, with our everyday choices. For those of us that we're given this level of awareness, it allows for us to have a responsibility for our family lineage, for sure, to clear it out and to not continue those programs and patterns anymore, especially, if we have little ones either here or on the way,
Absolutely. And I really feel that there are certain things I can look back in life that, like, oh my goodness, that was there to redirect me. So after I got back from Hong Kong at the end of 2006, and it was a pretty rough time, because I was in a 3-year relationship with an Australian man, and we broke up, and my contract ended at City University of Hong Kong, and I had nowhere to go but back to my parents' place in Toronto.
It was like a big one of those moments, right? Like where when it rains, it pours, right?
Yeah, and I felt like, excuse me, the biggest loser. I was just like, okay, no relationship, no job, nowhere to go except mom and dad's. Great. I suck. But anyway, I still actually kept up with the practices, even though there are moments where I'm just like, I'm in tears and bawling my eyes out, but okay, fine, meditate. Okay, fine, do your yoga. Okay, fine. Because
underneath it, you understood how powerful it was and how important it was for you, right?
For sure. I'm also a field biologist. So without any work and living at my parents' place, I just went crazy with applications. I was just like, I am so ready. I've lived abroad. If I get a job studying kiwi birds in New Zealand, I am on a one-way flight.
Right.
That's how ready for change I was, right? So it took about a year, but I applied to well over 100 and some odd places. And it was December of 2007 when I got the phone call, and she's like, hi, this is Paula Khan in Las Vegas. And I'm just like, what did I apply for in Las Vegas? Oops. And I'm like, she's giving me an interview on the spot, and I don't even remember what I applied for in Las Vegas. I was like, okay, just wing it, Maria, go for it, And so she's like, yeah, the Nevada State reptile is the desert tortoise, and it's on the endangered species.
Oh, wow.
I see that you have taken a desert ecology class, which I did in my 3rd year of my undergrad. And I'm just like, all like, yeah, that was a 1 semester class years and years ago, but yeah, I know the desert, kind of like, well, sure, lady,
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my God, this is such a joke. There's no way she'll ever hire me. And then 2 days later, she's like, you're hired. You're going to be on a crew leader position. She gave me a leader position.
Wow.
And I'm just like, how?
And you get to work with tortoises.
Yeah. And so I was like, how did that happen?
What a blessing.
And so next thing I knew, well, it was actually initially a 6-month project, right?
Okay.
And so I thought, oh, how am I going to survive Las Vegas, like the hedonism capital of the world, for 6 months? Oh my God, that'll be so hard. And that was 2008, and I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah, one thing that I've been tuning into is like, it seems like there are certain people that hold a frequency for a space, right? That they're pivotal in the community. They're very important to that land. They're very connected to the land. They're grounded into the space. They like magnetize people to the land, to the space, all over the world. Like there's these people that are like living beacons, right?
Yes.
And they hold down a certain frequency in those spaces, and it allows for growth and the mass awakening to happen. And it seems like people are guided and seated in these places all over the planet.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, from my experience, it seems like it's like going from middle school to high school to college.
Yes.
When you graduate from that space, then you upgrade to the next thing, right?
Time to move on, yeah.
And for my experience, on the East Coast, when I lived out there, Spirit was showing me, okay, you found Reiki, you found integrated energy therapy. The rest of your teachers are on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And just go. Don't.
We got you. Just trust.
Right. Like that's huge. That's such a huge thing, right? Like just so many people are afraid to take the leap. Yes. But in those leaps and bounds is where the most growth happens, because you become that beacon sometimes, and then all your teachers appear in the exact moment when they need to, And
same with angels too, because like I just got back from a couple of months. I'd gone to Japan for the first time since I left.
Oh wow!
Back in October, and then I went to Taiwan and Korea.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be lost, like, oh my gosh, this Google Maps is wrong. Like, how am I supposed to find this place? Boom, someone's like, doesn't speak English, turns on Google Translate. May I help you? Chinese to English, And I'm like, I'm looking for blah, blah, blah. Oh, come with me. And I'm like, this just random person came out of nowhere to help me. Like, doesn't speak English, but we got through on Google Translate. And like, where'd you come from? Like, oh, thanks, Spirit.
Right.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel protected anywhere I go in the world. Like, you just got.
And there's so much liberation in that.
Yes.
There's so much liberation in that. Yes. And there's so much fear around travel, around going to countries. Like, even for myself, like, it's hard for me to imagine going to Japan, even though I really want to. I resonate with the culture and the people so much.
You'd love it. You would love it.
I know. I was watching all your stories on Instagram, and it like is so inspiring for me, because Maria would post every day, and she would share all her temples and journeys. It was so beautiful.
I feel like it's also, I would even say it's safer than here, because people don't lock their bikes. People, like, you can leave a wallet, go eat in a restaurant, leave your wallet sitting there, go to the bathroom, come back, it'll still be there. No one even look at it. Like,
it's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine in the U.S.
I know, because now I became complacent over the last 2 months. I'm like, oh, wait, no.
Right.
Back in America, you got to put your wallet away.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, my thing is, like, if I go to Japan, my story in my head is like, how am I going to get around? How am I going to understand the language? I know there's the translators, but there's this worry, right? Of like, oh, okay, like, if I'm in the middle of nowhere, nobody speaks, my phone dies, what am I going to do? But I know it's just those moments are like reminders of like, just lean in and go for it. You'll be you'll be supported.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've done it before. You know, I've gone to many countries, like several countries that I didn't know the language or very little of it.
Yeah.
So, and I was very guided, and Spirit always, I can't say always, but from my experience, Spirit is, you can always tap into your angels and guides.
Absolutely.
And always ask for guidance.
Yeah. Even my first time around in Japan, when I lived there in my early 20s, I'll never forget, like, the flight I was taking out of there to leave Japan for good. I ended up injuring my knee, and I got to the airport too late, and I missed my flight. And yeah, back then it wasn't like, I think airlines are a little more understanding now. They'll put you on another flight or whatever. But this one was like, sorry, you lost it. You got to buy a new one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just like, oh no, now what am I going to do? Like, where am I going to stay? What am I going to do? The two late women who worked at the airline counter, like, basically said, you stay at our place tonight.
Oh,
We got
wow.
you. Yeah. And they totally, they spoke English because they deal with international travelers,
Right.
but I'll never forget them. And it's just like, they made dinner and we had fun. It was
Wow.
sweet. And it just was like, okay, what was I worried about again?
There's a very low chance that would ever happen in America.
I know.
It just shows how welcoming and different cultures can be, you know, and are.
Yeah.
So just to kind of wrap back to India, to circle back and I just have a few questions. So India is known for being like the Mecca of spirituality in some aspects. Like, everything there is revolved around spirituality. Like, I have several friends from India. They, you know, the Bhagavad Gita is like built into their cartoons as kids. Like, they're
meditation's taught in schools.
Yeah, there's a temple on every corner. You know, it's like, it's you can go and live in the mountains at like 12 years old if you're called to that journey. You know, it's like everything is revolved around spirituality in a big way. And so my question is, did you ever encounter any enlightened beings or any people that were just like vibrating in that really high place?
Well, I'll never forget, we did, so when we lost Kasia, the Polish woman, she ended up just like, no, I'm going to stay in the yoga ashram longer. We're like, okay, cool. And so, and then she ended up staying in India and living there for 20 years. But anyway, Anna Marie and I signed up for the 10-day Vipassana in a town called Hyderabad.
And what is a Vipassana for those that don't know?
Oh, yeah. It's a type of meditation where you're focusing on your sensations, and just the whole idea is to understand the concept of impermanence, because, I have a little itch on my elbow. Oh, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have a little twitch in my shoulder. Oh, it's gone. So when you observe all the sensations in your body, you realize nothing's permanent.
Without addressing them.
Yes.
Physically.
It's just you observing without judgment. And so that's the idea of Vipassana, being an observer in your meditation practice. So, but it was intense because they took away your reading materials, your writing materials, your phones, everything. It was all about going, and you had to be in silence.
Right. That's a big part of it.
And you couldn't even engage in body language or gestures or anything.
No eye contact
nothing,
either.
nothing.
Right.
So it was completely going 100% inwards as best you could, you know? And we were all assigned a teacher that we could actually, if we had any concerns, like, you know, let's say you're cold at night, or, you don't feel, maybe you need some food, you have some food allergy sensitivities or something. So any concerns, like physical concerns, you could talk to a teacher about that. And you had a little 15-minute window every day. And because India is a country with many, 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 many languages, the local language was Telugu, and then the national language that everyone understands each other with is Hindi, and then English, because they too were colonized by the British. So most Indian people are very good at speaking English. So I obviously chose the teacher in English.
Right.
And I remember it wasn't even so much a physical concern. It was like after day 3 or day 4, I was just like ready to quit because it was so hard. Like, I never meditated that much since 4:30 a.m. for hours and hours every day. And it was just like, I remember crying to her. I was just like, you're making us run marathons when we can't even jog. Yeah. Because I'm only a year into my meditation practice at that point.
Right.
And so I remember her, like, she just had this look of complete, likely enlightened being. And she just looked me straight in the eye. And she established eye contact with me and then smiled. And then just in the sweetest voice with her accent, just keep at it. You just keep at it. That's all you do.
I love that.
No problem. Why is there problem? No problem. And so I was just like, oh yeah, I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be like this amazing meditator. Like, I just do my best and that's it.
Right.
Nothing else matters. And it's just like, oh wow, she made that whole like crisis so simple,
4 words.
Yeah.
Just keep at it.
Just keep at it. No problem. Yeah.
Wow.
So I was just like, you are a very wise woman. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's just, I feel like some of the most, the highest beings just keep things as simple as possible. Where we're expecting them to be some sort of deep and meaningful and like full of like concepts that we'll never understand. No, they just keep it so simple.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, yeah.
So besides her, in all your travels and all the places you've lived, was there any other people that really were known and people would go to their teachings or to their ashrams?
Yes. I mean, a lot of them are deceased now. Like in a town called Pune, just outside of Mumbai, there was BKS Iyengar who came up with Iyengar Yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everyone just flocked to hear him.
So you got to meet him?
I did not, but I went to Pune, and he was still alive back then. So his ashram was still available to visit, but he wasn't there that day. But I just noticed how everyone just flocked there. And then in Mysore, Sri Patabi Joyce was still alive back then. Mm-hmm. Actually, his grandson Sharath just passed away. Like I was in October, I believe. Yeah, he passed away very recently. Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, everyone flocked to Mysore for the Ashtanga ashram, yeah. So a lot of the teachers who are now deceased, their ashrams are still alive, and people flock to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like Sri Rama Mahashari, and yeah,
Maharishi.
Yeah, Maharishi. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he attracted tons of people.
Oh yeah, he was
this day.
huge.
Yeah, I even have a photo. Oh yeah, there he is in my wallet. I did a 3-day. Maharishi silent meditation in Mexico.
Oh wow.
In 2020, yeah, that was really powerful too. But I feel like nowadays we're so full of distractions that a 10-day retreat almost seems impossible to most people. And
was that how long your Vipassana was? 10 days?
Uh-huh. Like I said, there was that, crying to the teacher moment. But
right.
then also, I found out later, I'll never forget, it was like maybe day 7 or so. My Norwegian friend, Anna Marie, she was like flailing her arms at me. I'm like, for goodness sakes, I've kept this up for 10 days. Stop distracting me. Like, no body language, please. Like, what are you doing, woman? And when we were allowed to talk after 10 days, she said, I wasn't trying to distract you or anything. She said, there was a snake that literally slithered right in front of you, and you were this close to stepping on it. And so I didn't know how else to warn you about that.
Jeez.
So
well, you were so vibed out that it didn't affect you at all.
Didn't even notice. Yeah.
Wow.
And she just said, like, I was just like, oh my God, she's gonna get bit, and she's like this close to this stepping on the snake.
And there's a few poisonous snakes in India, right?
Like king cobras and such, So.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was crazy how that she wasn't trying to like ruin my experience. She was genuinely concerned for my well-being.
Yeah,
but in silence, how do you warn someone?
Yeah, for sure.
So she was just trying different ways to get my attention without breaking the silence.
Yeah. So I think the reason, or I know the reason that I'm asking about the enlightened teachers is because, in the Piscean age, which we just exited out of, the guru, regardless of whether it's in India, Japan, whatever country it's in the Piscean age, it was known that you had to be in the presence of an enlightened being in order to receive an activation, in order for that being to become enlightened.
Right.
And a lot of these gurus like Maharishi, they would transmit without words or language to their students this knowing and this vibration, and just being in their presence.
Their darshan, yeah.
Their darshan, yeah. That these students would feel something, and for some of them, it led to an enlightenment. And so, now that we're in the Aquarian age, it's a little bit different.
I feel like everyone's our teacher.
Yeah.
And with my environmental work, I'm a member of the Sierra Club, and we had our holiday party on Friday night, and there was so much leftover food, and they were like, "Hey, anyone want to take this home? Anyone?" And they were getting to the point where no one was taking everything home, and I'm like, you know what? We're right here downtown. There's tons of people camped out. I'll take it all. And so I swung by and fed these hungry people.
Oh, it's amazing.
And I feel like they're our teachers. They're at this moment in time in their situation to teach people compassion.
Mm-hmm. That's just one of the lessons,
Exactly. I'm just using that as an example. But why shouldn't a houseless person on the street be a teacher? Why does it have to be some enlightened being in an ashram in India? No, it's this guy on the street. He's teaching people compassion.
Well, yeah, I had a whole new perspective on that actually in the last couple of months, where I believe that, I believe in reincarnation. Mm-hmm. I think that was a key component, a key piece of the puzzle for me when I had my awakening, right? Yeah. And, if somebody is a really advanced soul, they're going to go through these experiences like releasing all their attachments to material possessions. And
that's like Buddha.
Yeah. I mean, so many, so many teachers, that's a big aspect, right? Like releasing from the material plane, just knowing that you're fine and supported and guided with just one shirt, one pair of pants,
Yeah, exactly.
And, I've had friends, and I still do have friends that are houseless, right? And the experiences they share with me is really next level sometimes, And for those people, some of them, I believe, are really advanced souls that are going through this initiation by not having any material possessions in order to reach some sort of activation or understanding, where they can rebuild from nothing, and or just have so much trust in the universe, to bring them back to Creator, that they're always guided, they're always supported in whatever ways that looks like.
Sure.
And then there's the part where people are avoiding that shadow work we were talking about, and so they're numbing out with these really intense drugs, and then that puts them into this really toxic cycle of needing that drug in order to function. And that's why I'm so passionate about the shadow work. Yes. And, I run a men's circle every 2 weeks here in Vegas.
Love it. That's so awesome you do that.
Thank you. And I know you're part of the women's circle with my partner, Noella, and it's
Sweat Lodge tonight.
The women's Sweat Lodge tonight. But it's like, it's so important. It's so important to go into those shadows and to clear that out, because even on those really intense drugs, what I believe partially may be happening for some of these people is they're going into these other dimensions, these other states of being on the drugs, where they are learning different things and having to face themselves. Yeah. And in those spaces, they have an opportunity to shift and and there's just sometimes needs to be an awareness that there's a choice.
Yes. I have a really good example of that. Someone else who was temporarily a teacher, in 2011, my friend Rob, he's friends with a lot of the Havasupai elders in the Havasupai Nation, which is one section of the Grand Canyon that it is run by the Havasupai Nation, right? And it's
in Arizona.
Yeah, and it's absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. I highly recommend everyone goes there. It's an 8-mile hike into the canyon, and then you get to the village, and then there's just bright crystal blue waters and waterfalls, and it's just a great place to spend a few
It looks
days.
like something out of Central or South America. It's so trippy.
It is beautiful, right? So we went there out because there's normally a tourist season and you get permits for doing this, right? But because Rob was friends with these tribal elders, we got to go without the permits and outside of tourist season. So it was like, I would say it was February in 2011.
Wow.
But there was a little bit of conflict because we did the 8 miles and it's starting to get dark. So we were just looking for a place to set up camp. And one of the elders who actually invited us, his name is Fidel. And Fidel, well, first of all, as we entered the village, the Havasupai village, we were greeted with such hostility, like, because they're like, what are you non-Indigenous folks doing here? Like, Havasupai's closed. Can't you see the sign? You know, and Rob's like, actually, we're going to be guests of Fidel's. And he's like, it doesn't matter. Havasupai's closed, right? So we actually went to Fidel's house, and there was a conflict because Fidel's wife got ill, and the closest medical facility is Kingman, Arizona. There's a hospital there. And because they're deep in a canyon, the only way to get there is by helicopter, right? So because he was so preoccupied with his wife getting sick and taking her to Kingman, he forgot to tell the tribe we were coming. So, that was an issue. So luckily, Fidel's daughters were quite helpful, and they're like, who else do you know here? And so Rob was listing off other elders he knew, and a guy named Roland came, and he said, you guys can camp out on my property for the night. We'll deal with this in the morning, right? He wakes us up at like 6 a.m. and just says, good news, bad news. Bad news, most of the tribe is not cool with you being here. Good news, I could probably convince them if you're willing to, because one of the issues with canyons is flash flooding. And when a flash flood rolls through, it just destroys everything in its path. So they had a flash flood not too long earlier than that. And so a lot of their wooden footbridges and stuff had completely been destroyed. So he said, if you're willing to like get your hands dirty and help around the village and pick up all this flash flood debris, I'm sure the tribe would be okay with you staying here. Like, we're like, put us to work. So with all that debris we picked up, he did a sweat lodge for us. And that was my very first sweat lodge.
Oh, wow.
You know, run by this Indigenous elder. And
that's such a powerful place to do it.
Oh, my goodness. And so he conducted the ceremony in both the Supai language and in English. And he was like, alcohol is unfortunately an issue in a lot of Indigenous communities. And I remember he broke down and he was like, great spirit, alcohol is killing my people, please. And then he told us his story, which is getting back to what you were saying about he said I had the worst problem with alcohol. He said, I downed a bottle of whiskey and I don't even remember what happened. I just woke up in a puddle of my own vomit. And I was like, oh my God. And that was his huge awakening, the catalyst for awakening, getting into the worst, deep, darkest, muddiest, grossest hole you could imagine. And then being like, what would my ancestors think of me? It's like soaking in my own puke. Like, no way. And he said that was the last drink he ever had. And then he became this elder shaman in the community conducting sweat lodges, you know.
Wow.
And but he had to go there. He had to go to that gross, deep, dark pit of hell to get to where he is now, you know.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's just, it seems like that's one of the paths for some people, you know. I'm fascinated to learn what sparks that awakening for different people, because there's, and I'm also fascinated when it's somebody that if I saw on the street, I would never imagine that person went through that, or that the way that they look physically or whatever, like I would have never imagined. And that's the beauty of it is like now on Earth, there's every race, every color, every age that's awakening and awake.
Yeah.
And so they're there to be the leaders and the way showers.
Yes.
And it's so beautiful because, I've met people that every walk of life, every type of journey, from what we were talking about, from these heavy drugs leading to an awakening to a really hard breakup, to
losing everything,
to losing their job, to losing their career that they were so attached to, that they got so high up in their job or in their professional
or had a
athletic
major
career
accident, injury,
like car accidents. Also psychedelic journeys, like really deep psychedelic journeys. For a lot of people, that's the spark. And it's fascinating to me how the soul kind of has a bit of a blueprint. It's like we have some freedom of choice, I believe. We can choose certain things, but then we have a guidebook, a guideline to kind of like, it's almost like a river flowing into the ocean, right? Like we're all going to get back to the ocean. We're all going to die. We're all going to leave this body. But all of our rivers kind of flow a little different. And we have choice. Like some parts of the river is going to flow a little, slower. Some parts are a little faster. Some you're going to be able to get off on the banks and camp and get some chill and get some rest. Other parts you're going to have to
navigate
buckle
really
in and
crazy waters.
you're going to go over some waterfalls, So to me, it's like all of it is okay. And it took me a long time to get to that place where, none of it, everything passes. It too shall pass, right? Like getting too attached to that joy and that like beauty and the amazing food and the amazing cars and whatever else, right? Like we can enjoy that, but then that too shall pass. Like that car is going to break down or somebody's going to scratch it or whatever at some point, right? The food's going to be eaten. The house is going to crumble, eventually. So nothing is permanent. And it's all the thing I've learned is like it doesn't have to be so big of a deal when there's a down.
Right, exactly. And that's part of growth, because at the beginning of the journey I was just like, oh my God, I'm such a failure. It was going so good before, now it's terrible. But like, you just have to realize that like you said, it's not terrible. It will pass, and don't get attached.
Because even the worst, because that's the whole beauty of going into that darkest place, right? Like if you go to that darkest place and you crawl yourself out of it, which is I believe the only way out is pulling yourself up, pulling your pants back up, getting out of that puddle, of tears sometimes, and just crawling out. Because if you've gone to that place, then all these little challenges are so much more manageable.
Totally.
And then we do these practices every day, right? In order to challenge and stress our bodies sometimes, in order to go into these places of stillness, so that when our nervous system is activated and there is this challenge, then bam, we're able to navigate and manage it so much easier, because our body's used to being stressed and then relaxed, and then relaxed, Kundalini yoga was a really big one for me with that. Like really, really going for it, like just hitting these postures where you're holding your arms up for 3 minutes, which doesn't seem like that long, but
when the lactic acid kicks in, you're like,
it's tough.
It is.
And it's funny because the most fit people, like the bodybuilders that I know, have the hardest time with it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not about the muscle strength.
Yeah.
It's about the mental strength.
Absolutely.
And the ability to find that center and to stay in that place, you know?
Yes, absolutely. And it's you also realize that actually the mental strength is ultimately what matters, because with that strong will and strong willpower, you can push through anything.
Yeah. Yeah, because the muscles can deteriorate, you can get injured, you
Totally.
can, you know, like I've seen it happen so many times to my friends. I had a lot of bodybuilder friends in the East Coast, and, you know, they'd get injured and they couldn't work out, and it was so deflating for them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had such a big identity with their body.
Yeah.
And like if their body wasn't perfect, they felt like they wouldn't get, you know, any love and attention from women or from their friends and family. Like it was a big eye opener.
It's really sad but that's their journey, and then they have to go through the dark when that happens, and then hopefully come out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
More
And
evolved.
yeah. And you know, it's so interesting to me to see the ways all different people awaken.
Yes.
So have you gone to any other ashrams, any other spiritual teachers since then?
Yeah. Well, I have one here in Vegas. I have a few here, but the one for the meditation anyway. Yoga is a different story. But his name is Master Chaya. He is the head monk at Chaya Meditation Monastery over on Rainbow and Warm Springs. It's a Thai Buddhist temple.
Oh, beautiful.
He's Burmese, though, and so it serves the Thai and the Burmese community. I've also seen some Sri Lankans there because they're also Theravada Buddhists. But he has Burma's been at war since, 60s, maybe even since World War II. I have to check that again. But
were they at war with?
Civil. It's,
okay.
From within. Yeah, because they got the military junta in power, and then they have various different ethnicities, especially in the north. And so, it's and then they have the Rohingya people, the Muslims in the south, that they're trying to make go away to.
So it's like a religious thing mostly?
Bangladesh, yeah. But anyway, so he escaped Burma when he was a young monk and served in Thailand. And so he's fluent in both languages and in English as well. But I started going there because I was like, oh, they offer meditation 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Actually, 4 to 5, but I don't think the 4 to 5 is open to the public. You can, if you're staying there, you can do the 4 to 5 one, but 4 a.m. to 5 a.m.
And they do Vipassanas too?
He's mostly a Vipassana teacher,
okay.
But it's just a period of complete silence where they ding a bell every 15 minutes. But
okay.
It's completely open to the public.
That's beautiful.
Every 9 a.m. every single day, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m., 2 p.m. to 3 p.m., and then 5 to 6. So you can come anytime. So I started going in 2017, and he also is just an amazing teacher. I remember once someone that I lent $800 to completely betrayed me, and I was really upset because I helped her, and so I just felt really betrayed by her. And he just put it completely in perspective to me, and he said, well, maybe it's a karmic debt you owe, and just be happy you're not in the red.
Right.
You're in the black. So I'm like,
right.
Okay, not so bad. Eventually, it's funny because over a year later, she did pay me back, but it was just, I let it go because of his wise teachings, And so, I enjoy going there. There's an Indian couple named Madhu and Baba. They live in Anthem, and they host...
Is that California?
No, just over here, Anthem, Vegas, the very, very southernmost part of Henderson.
Oh, okay.
And she, Madhu and Baba are very, 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 very devout devotees, and they host New Year's Day, actually. If you're not doing anything, they do a really amazing New Year's Day celebration of chanting and yagna fire and stuff. And then in March for Shivaratri, they do a really elaborate Shiva, 24 hours of chanting to Shiva and pouring the milk with the ghee and the cream and honey concoction over the Shiva statue. And and then everyone takes some of that blessed concoction home with them.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, they do that. And then in April, they do the Hanuman Atri, like where they chant Hanuman Chalisa 108 times.
Right.
That usually starts at 9 a.m. and finishes at like 4 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
And then in September, they do 24 hours of Gayatri mantra chanting. So at least one person must be chanting. Others can sleep, take turns, whatever. But
right.
yeah, they host all those events at their place, and they're just amazing people. Like literally anyone's welcome, even if you're just off the street. Like, and they have tons of food that they share with everyone, and it's all about the practice, and everyone's welcome. So, yeah, they're amazing people, and I feel like they're higher level beings as well. But they're just like happy go lucky. Oh, hello, Maria. What are you? Oh, have some food. You know, like just normal everyday people, but they just are very devout and are very dedicated to their practice, and it's so inspiring, you know.
Yeah.
And then recently, right before I left Asia, I found out that you can actually the temple stays are a thing there, because it really got going when Korea hosted the '88 Olympics, but they also hosted the 2002 World Cup for soccer or football, and they were okay with the '88 Olympics, but in the World Cup they were short on accommodations for all these players and their fans from all over the world. So the Buddhist temples were like, okay, well, we got space. You guys can stay here.
Wow.
So all these people started staying at Buddhist temples, and now it's a thing. Like, but you know, in order to stay there, you need to be a participant in the community and like get up at 4:30 and all that, right? So I did that. My friend
in South Korea.
Yeah, my friend Hyoju helped me with this. She was just like, okay, well, here's the website. So first we had to find the dates that worked for me. And then when we did that, we narrowed it down for the markets. I'm like, which one do I choose, you know? And then I was just drawn to this one called Malgoksa. Malgoksa was built in 640 AD, so
Whoa.
It's 1,500 years old.
Wow.
1,400 years old, sorry. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And it's
what does that mean?
So it's recognized by the UN as being one of the world cultural treasures.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they award different places all over the world. Like just they get extra protection so that, you know, nobody can destroy it, or nobody, you know, because it's got the UN protection to it, right?
It's like a historical landmark.
Exactly. Like a world treasure. It's for the precious to the world, not just to Korea.
Wow.
And so, yeah, as soon as I walked on, it was 2 hours away from Seoul, and it was extra challenging because I probably, out of the 3 places I went to, I know Korean the least, you know? And yeah, so 2 hours south of Seoul, there's like no foreigners at all, right? And so I knew I had to take one bus from Seoul, which my friend helped me get on. But then once I had to take the other one, I was just like clueless, because I'm like, which stop is it? Where do I go? And again, a magical angel helped me out. She's just a woman walking her dog, and she sees I'm confused. She asks me in Korean, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I have no idea. And then I pull out my Google Translate, and I said, I'm going to stay at Malgoksa. Malgoksa, like,
wow.
I struck a nerve with her. She's like, oh my God, you're going to go stay at our precious temple? And she spent like the next half hour with me to make sure that I got on.
Wow.
I know, she was like, okay, we went to one stop, and then she does, oh, no, it's that side of the road. Yeah. And then it was just so sweet. And so the next one wasn't coming for like another 20 some odd minutes. And it was really cold there because it already started to snow in Korea. And so she ends up talking to like a cafe owner, like this really older couple, right next to the stop. And she's like, you can stay. And then she shows me like, you can stay here. And I'm like, okay, so the only problem was with these small little mom and pop cafes, you need cash. And I only had a card with me at that point. So I'm just like, I feel really bad sitting in this. So I explained to her, I'm like, I have no Korean won on me. I only have a card. And, you know, they don't accept cards, right? The older man, like, got 3 corn on the cobs. And he's like, here. And I'm like, I hand the card to pay. And he's like, no, it's free. And like, yeah. So they gave me free snacks.
That's beautiful.
While I waited. And again, taken care of, you know.
So how long did you stay at the temple?
Just a couple of days, and but it was magic. As soon as I got off the bus, it was about a 10-minute walk to the temple, and it was just like this mystical, because it's in the mountains, and like it's led up there via this creek and rice fields and everything, and it was just so beautiful, and you could feel like this ancient sort of energy to it, you know, that it had been around like so long. And then you're greeted by the person because they're expecting you. You signed up for it. And she was the only one who spoke English. And she's like, "This is your room." And the room was just so sweet. It was just this, it had a heated floor.
Wow.
It had my own bathroom, and it was just a mattress on the floor. It was so simple, but it was just perfect, what I needed, you know? It's so comfy, so cozy. And then I made friends. I was the only foreigner, and I made friends with this group of 3 women from Seoul. There was a mother, her daughter, and the mother's friend. The mother and the mother's friend didn't speak English, but the daughter did. And the daughter might be coming to Las Vegas next year.
Wow, amazing!
Like, I'll gladly host you.
Yeah.
So it's so cool how everything just worked out. But yeah, up at 4:30, but it wasn't meditating at 4:30. It was ringing the temple bell.
Okay.
And it was just so powerful and beautiful to think that this bell is like 1,400 years old.
Right.
You know? And then it was chanting, then meditation, and then morning breakfast at 7 a.m. And oh my God, the food. It's all vegetarian because it's a Buddhist temple.
Yeah.
But like the Koreans, I love spicy food. And it was just like few different kinds of kimchi.
Kimchi, yeah.
Oh my God, so good for your gut. Just seaweed soup. It was delicious. And
Wow.
Lotus root.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness, that was so wonderful. But I found out they made their own kimchi on the premises. So
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
yeah, they put it in earthenware jars, and it's traditionally supposed to be buried underground,
Right.
and then pulled up in the springtime. But because the temperatures are so cold, they just left them out there.
Because you're so high up in the mountains.
Exactly. So I just noticed a massive pile of earthenware jars just sitting there. I'm like, oh my God, that's going to be yummy kimchi in the spring. So
yeah, I see like these kind of places that are so old.
Yeah.
I just feel like they must be supercharged with
Yes.
so many people meditating there for so
Absolutely.
many years.
Absolutely. And it's really like just, oh my goodness. It's so, I can't even describe it. You just walk in and you feel it, you know, like I would say even someone not sensitive to that energy would feel it because it's so powerful. You know?
Yeah, I would assume so. So was it easier for you to get into those deeper meditations?
Absolutely. Almost effortlessly. You just like dropped right in, you know? And there was one right before we checked out, there was a session with the monk, it was kind of like a tea and a chat with a monk. That was what it was called.
I love it.
And this man came from like 4 generations of monks. Because when you leave the monastery, you're allowed to marry and, you know, start a family and stuff. But you're vowed to celibacy while you're there. But yeah, his great-grandfather, his grandfather, his father, and him were all monks. Yeah.
4 generations.
Yeah. So that was just like, and he just said what brought him there. And again, he had a dark night of the soul story as well. And
you guys talked about that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And it was just...
Younger guy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, really cool to experience that, you know. Yeah.
Wow. That's really special. So how many monks do you think were living there at any given
he said
time?
There's 13.
So it's small.
It's pretty small. Yeah.
Very intimate.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think 2 nuns. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the elevation? Like how many feet up?
It was approximately 3,000 meters. So I would say like maybe 9,000 or 10,000-ish. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't remember where I heard this, but somebody had mentioned that above 10,000 feet, you no longer hear and experience the energy of everybody below.
Right.
So it's like Mount Shasta when you're at the top. It's said it's very quiet. Like even in that meditative space, like it's easier to just get into that space. And it's so astral up there.
Blocked out the other lower energies.
Yeah, like kind of cancels it out, I guess.
Cancels it out, that's the word.
Yeah, because it's like, so I know you also climbed up one of the big mountains, right?
That was really cool. Like, so I've learned just from my experiences while traveling, and I started in, like, I've been traveling for years and years and years and years, like since I was a kid, thanks to my parents who traveled a lot. But solo travel, in 2019, I was just like, you know what? A lot of the time when I book a round trip ticket, it's a pain to go back to the same airport I landed in. Like, it ends up being more convenient to fly out of another airport. So I was just like, just get a one-way. Mm-hmm. And so I've been doing that since 2019, and it's just been much better because I end up somewhere else where I don't plan to be, and it's just more convenient to fly out of there, right?
Right.
So I didn't even plan to go to Korea. I met Hyoju in Japan, actually, at a music festival.
Oh, wow.
And I just connected with her right away because she's just a really amazing woman. And
she's the one from Korea.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And so she lived in the Bay Area for 20 years. So her English is excellent. She's like a computer engineer. She worked for Google, but then she had enough and wanted to go back to Korea. So, but she's really awesome. And the way that all went down, because I was just kind of like, remember when I was just like, oh, I haven't really booked a ticket back yet.
Right.
And so when I was looking into that, there was Korean Airlines that had a 23-hour layover in Seoul. So I just said to her, I was like, ooh, this one looks good. And there's a 23-hour layover in Seoul. Would you be free? She's like, girl, you can stay here as long as you want. Uh-huh. You're more than welcome. And I was just like, oh. And then I did the math, and I was like, wait a second. It's actually cheaper to fly to Seoul and then separately book another flight back home. So, wow. And so I ended up being there just like shy of a week, you know? Mm-hmm. So, and it was the really cold weather that was like, okay, it's a catalyst to go, because I wasn't prepared for that, like, snowstorm weather kind of thing.
Right.
She had to lend me clothes to be warm there. But yeah, so it was...
And she suggested you climb the mountain?
Oh, okay. No, I was just digressing. The mountain was, just looking at the map, I was just like, wow, like, because I was expecting Taiwan to be this tropical island, which it is, but the interior is all mountainous, right?
Oh,
and I was just like, oh, wow, that looks really cool. And then, oh, there's national parks here, and there's this there. And I was like, oh, that's worth checking out. And then when I saw, I was like, oh, Yushan, which in Chinese means Jade Mountain. It's, wow. Tallest peak in Northeast Asia.
How many feet?
13,000 and change.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was just like, how doable is it? Because I didn't even bring like hiking boots or any like proper mountaineering equipment, you know? And I'm just like, how doable is it? And I was reading about it, like, okay, it's intense in terms of length, but not technical. So I was like, okay, well, if I want it bad enough, maybe I can do it in my Vans skater shoes. Uh-huh. And so everything pointed to me doing it, because I just had to find a window of good weather. Mm-hmm. The weather couldn't have been more perfect. Like, it literally rained and even snowed at the top, like the day or two before. You know? Yeah. And I arrived in this town called Alishan, right? And it's difficult to get to the mountain hut from there, especially if you arrive there later in the day. But I went to the like tourist information center to ask for advice, and she's like, it's only tax season. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's going to cost a fortune. Boom, 2 Aussie guys show up. They're like, oh, we're looking to go to Yushan, mate. Right. And they're like,
nice.
No way, so am I. Oh, well, let's share a taxi then, right? And so I split the costs with them, and we got to the mountain hut. And then we talked to the guy there, and we're like, okay, we want to, because a lot of people do it in 2 days, right?
So the mountain hut's at the base.
Right. Uh-huh. So we were talking to, and it was so cheap. It was like $12 for the night or something ridiculous, right? But anyway, we were talking to the guy, and we're like, we don't want to do it in 2 days. We want to do it in one full go, right? Because the Aussie guys were on the same
like
page.
There and back in one day?
Yeah. And he's like, well, you're going to have to start at 3 a.m., right? Okay. We'll start at 3 a.m. then. And so...
So how many miles was it?
It ended up being like almost 30K, so just around shy of 20.
Around 20 miles there and back.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we started at 3 and we finished, I finished at like 4:30. So I actually beat the Aussies to the summit. And but they beat me back because my shoes were, like, I was starting to feel every little rock on the way down on my like flimsy shoes. So so I had to take it a little easier with the descent, you know. But yeah, it ended up being like 13 hours and change for the whole round.
So is this the tallest mountain you've climbed so far?
No, actually, I've done one in Ecuador that was probably around 18,000, and that was a real challenge.
Wow.
But yeah, it was just, when you're at that high elevation, there's low levels of oxygen. So, but you adapt. Your body adapts, you know.
So on this one, did you start to have a hard time breathing? No. Okay.
Thank goodness. The weather could not have been more perfect. I feel like we're so blessed. And I was just meeting really awesome people along the way. Besides the Aussies. But when I got to the summit, there was a really cool Korean guy, an awesome Japanese guy who was a photographer, and then the rest were just these really fun, outgoing Taiwanese guys. And I just felt like I met my tribe on the summit, you know, really cool people, and we all shared the joy of reaching the summit together, you know.
Wow.
Really beautiful.
That's so special. I mean, you know, there's not that many people that go to those lengths, you know, that go and
I feel like the opportunity was there, so I took it, you know.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a gift. Okay, well, you're being given this gift, you know, take it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, this brings up a thought about astrocartography.
Yeah.
Have you looked into your astrocartography before?
I need to.
So just for those that don't know what it is, I recently learned about it. Basically, astrocartography is taking your astrology and it gets mapped out on the whole planet. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, there are certain lines with different planets that cut through different parts of the planet. So, and each one of the lines represents a different part of your life that can potentially be activated by visiting one of these locations. Yeah, and it's really interesting when you compare it with somebody else, because there are only certain lines that intersect for both parties.
That's why you meet some people at certain times.
Right. So, and also, like, if you're with a partner or a girlfriend, boyfriend, right, or husband, wife, you look at these lines, and where the lines intersect is where you're both going to be happiest living.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so, like, for me, I have a lot of astrocartography around Australia.
Really?
And, like, all the little islands around there. And the different ones over there have different activations. And what's interesting is in America, I only have a few select points where, like, is quote unquote like ideal for me to live, right? And one of them is on the East Coast where I grew up. One of them's in San Diego where I just lived for 8 years.
Wow.
And then one of them's in Vegas.
No way.
Yeah,
and hit them all.
And so I'm on my third one in the U.S. And it's really interesting because my girlfriend also has a line through Vegas, so we both are here. And
meant to be.
Yeah, it's a really interesting synchronicity. So, you know, and I wonder if you looked at your astrocartography, whether you would have, since you've traveled so much, you've probably hit a lot of those points. And if you look back on those points, it'd be interesting for me to see, like, after you visited those places, whether you got those activations.
I will have to look into that. That is something I really need to do. That's fascinating. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. It's such an interesting concept and idea, because I also believe the planet, I believe, has also 7 energy centers, just like our bodies do. Yeah. 7 main energy centers. And part of my ideal scenario for this lifetime would be to go to all 7 of them.
Yeah.
And one of them I've already been to, which is Mount Shasta, which we were talking about. And that's considered the root chakra of the planet. Yeah. And then the next one, the sacral, is actually in Lake Titicaca, Peru. Wow. And so that would be one of the places I would want to go to. Also, Stonehenge is one of them. Then in Tibet, Mount Kailash.
I've been to all of them.
You've been to those? Okay. And another one is the mountain in Australia in the middle of the country.
Oh, yeah. I was just talking to the Aussies about that when we were doing...
What's the name of the mountain?
It starts with A, Agusco or something like that, yeah. But anyway, yeah. Or are you referring to Uluru? the red one.
I think it might be Uluru. It's
Okay.
like in the middle of the country.
Okay, that could be Uluru. It's a massive sacred rock. That
Right. That's it.
Aboriginals don't want you climbing, but people
Right.
adore that and climb it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If I went, I would obviously respect
Yeah.
the local people, but it would be beautiful to just sit by it and get
feel
that
the energy,
activation.
for sure.
Another one. What was the other one? I think on some of them, one of the Hawaiian islands, like Kauai is one of them, which I've been to.
Yeah.
And that I've been to Kauai 3 times, and I feel really connected to that land. It feels,
It's one of my favorite islands.
yeah, it feels really similar to, in some regards, to the Mount Shasta energy, because, you know, I learned this from one of the elders in Mount Shasta, who I'm trying to get on the podcast. His name's Peter of Mount Shasta, and he basically told me that around the 60s they created this idea of this city inside of Mount Shasta, which is called Telos.
Okay.
And it can be accessible in this reality, but also it is kind of like in another dimension.
Sure.
And a lot of people believe that the people of Atlantis and Lemuria, mostly Lemuria, went into Telos and created this city in the mountain there. And Mount Shasta is an interesting place for those that haven't been. There's a lot of missing people signs all over the town.
Yeah.
This time when I went, there wasn't as many for some reason. But maybe they're trying to keep it, because it used to be when I went in 2020 or 2021, the first time, they were all over the town, missing people signs. And
Interesting.
Some of that might be related to Telos.
Interesting.
There's also a lot of Bigfoot sightings in that area, so it may be related to that. Also, there's a lot of like things that happen that are unexplained over there.
Sure.
You know, like people will jump into the water, go underwater, and never be seen from again. You know, there's stories like that. They'll jump off the bridge into the lake and never be seen from again. They never find their body. It's like in clear daylight. Everybody sees it. So there's got to be portals there as well.
Sure.
That's the only explanation I can think of with those kind of things. And I know that there are lava tubes that go into the mountain as well, that probably people go in, potentially maybe they find this city in there, and they don't want to leave, you know? So there's a lot of, and I'm sure there's many more things, right? But the whole idea of these chakras of the planet is like there's a huge activation in the body happening, even more so than these astrocartography lines, which are like meridian points or acupuncture points on our body, but on the planet for the individual, right? And so just like on your body, if you activate a certain point in acupuncture, that's going to affect one of your organs.
Right.
And it's known that the endocrine organs are related. They are the chakras. Right. They are the torus of each chakra. And so that was, you know, really interesting to compare the planet, which I believe is alive, and those meridian centers on the planet, and the activations that happen in those spaces.
That makes sense. And
then I think there are like secondary meridians and chakras that you can also, you know, a lot of these temples and pyramids are built on because they're such powerful energy centers. Sure. Also churches, a lot of churches and places like Sedona are like vortexes for these activations. Yep. And so there's different grid work and light grid work that people do around the planet to anchor in light and love into these places. Sure. So I've done a little bit of that work, but
that's fascinating.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with that. I think it's an important part of the planet, because we need to anchor in the light. And just by showing up in a place, praying or meditating,
you're amplifying it.
Right.
Yeah.
You're like grounding your energy into it. And then that energy allows for you to get activated and also the land to get activated, which is part of the planet. So, certain people I think play as like keys to this puzzle, you know?
Brilliant.
So
I'll have to look into that. Now I'm really like wanting to do it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've been to a lot of these chakras of the planet. Were there any of those in particular that were like really, really far out, or like you went there and afterwards just like life opened up in certain aspects? Or can you share anything about that?
Well, Kailash. So it was interesting. Kailash was in the year 2000,
Which is the crown chakra, by the way.
Right. I didn't even start a spiritual journey, but it sparked curiosity because because of that, I was like, I can do Yushan, Jade Mountain, in vans, because I saw these Tibetans who had like cheap Chinese fall apart shoes with like
flip flops almost.
Yeah, like soles unstuck, and they were doing 3 days around Kailash because of their devotion to their practice. And I was like, wow, if they can do that, then I can surely do Yushan in a pair of Vans, you know. Oh wow! Because I remember that and I was inspired by that. But you can't. Well, you could climb Kailash, but you have to be like a hardcore mountaineer, like Everest level mountaineer, you know.
Yeah, I mean the spiritual monks and stuff don't recommend it, right?
They do it around. They go around. They do. It's called a Kora.
But they don't recommend going to the top, right?
Yeah, no, that's for people with special mountaineering skills. You know, that's not for the average person. The average person just does 3 days around the mountain.
But from a spiritual perspective, they say it's not good to climb to the top, right? I think
so. I have to remember. I have to look that back up. But I believe you're right.
Because it's such a high energy space that most people's nervous system would have a really hard time handling it.
Shiva's birthplace, basically.
Right.
Yeah. But so that's probably correct. Yeah. But so what we did it in 3 days. You know, did one section, camped, got up, did the next section, camped, and then third section back to the beginning. You know, but a really devoted Buddhist would do it in one go. Even if it takes 30 hours, you know, they'll do the whole thing.
So you did that with the monks.
No, I befriended 2 Aussies, a British guy of Indian heritage, 2 Americans, and me. Oh, and a Belgian guy and me. So it was like 8 of us, but we kind of went at our own pace. So there were times where we were together, times we were just on our own.
Okay.
Yeah. But we met a lot of Buddhist monks along the way.
Wow.
And I remember sitting down to like have a snack break, and they really like yak butter tea, which resembled more of a soup than a tea, because it's just melted yak butter,
right? And
it's really pungent, you know. So they offered that in their thermoses, you know, and
that's high, you know, fuel for this. Yeah,
totally. And yaks are mountain creatures, so you're getting these creatures that are adapted to the high altitude, and you're getting their milk, you know, to make butter tea out of it. And then they eat tsampa, which is made with like barley, and like it's a really dense, you know, and it's kind of, they make it in balls, and then they were just giving that out. And so I was joining them for yak butter tea and tsampa.
Wow.
And we didn't speak each other's languages, but we, you know, shared. The more you travel and hang out with people who don't speak your language or don't look like you, the more you realize like we're all the same.
Right. We're
really all the same. All this is all exterior fluff.
Right.
Know? Yeah.
It's just a jacket.
Exactly.
They're wearing a yellow jacket or a pink jacket.
Exactly.
We're wearing a purple jacket, you know?
It's just externality. Yeah.
So one thing that I heard Sadhguru, which is a spiritual teacher in India.
I love him.
I listened to his podcast with Joe Rogan recently, and he mentioned that, you know, when you go to these places like Mount Kailash, there's been so many advanced, like super advanced meditators that have just sat there for days and months on end, and they receive these downloads and these insights in those higher realms. And then what they do is they anchor that knowledge into the land.
Yeah.
And then when somebody is ready, they will be guided with their intuition to go to that specific land and sit in meditation and receive those downloads that those people seeded into that land. And so that's another fascinating thing for me.
I believe that because, like I said, I was drinking and partying, like, you know, when I went to, like, in that era of my life, when I ended up in Mount Kailash, and that literally sparked the curiosity. And then also magic did happen. I'll never forget, there was this raging river at one point in the hike, like, and I was terrified because I was like, I don't have the skills to cross this river. I'm terrified, right?
Yeah.
And just out of nowhere, so the Sherpa people of Nepal are very mountain people. Like, they're often hired as porters for people who climb Mount Everest, you know?
What's a porter?
People who carry all the gear.
Oh, okay.
Because they're extra hardy mountain people, right?
Uh-huh.
So, like, I'm standing on the riverbank. It's rushing. It's freezing cold water. And I'm like, and I'm terrified because I can see it going up to my knees, probably even further. And in one wrong step, I could get swept away, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just like, what do I do? What do I do? And there's no bridge. You have to cross the river. And so I was just trying to look for the shallowest point. I was just trying to, like, oh no, now what do I do? All of a sudden, hello, I'm Kaji Sherpa. I can help you. And he takes my backpack, and then he, like, has me grab his arm, and then I just step over thanks to grabbing his arm and cross the river with ease.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, yeah, if you ever come to Nepal, I am a mountain guide.
Wow. Oh, that's so cool.
Kaji Sherpa.
Another one of those synchronicities, you know,
an
that
angel was sent down to help. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wasn't even aware of that back then. It
Right.
just magically happened, and it was probably because of the land being so sacred.
Yeah. I mean, this conversation is really inspiring me to do more travel to these kind of places for sure. So I have a question. So since 2004, you've been on the spiritual journey, right? Yeah. So now that you've had almost 21 years of being on this journey, what is your daily practice look like? What have you found with experimenting with different practices, with different ways to clear your energetic body, to center yourself, to basically take care of your spiritual and energetic hygiene? Like, what have you found is most effective for the listeners that may be just starting or want to explore some new practices?
Yeah. So if you're familiar with Ayurvedic medicine, in Ayurveda,
which is from India, right?
Yeah, there's they call the 3 doshas, and usually you can fit under those categories. There's the Vata dosha, which is like dry and
it's air.
Yeah, an air element. It's dry. People with Vata constitutions tend to be very ADD, very all over the place kind of thing, like go kind of.
Yeah, they're usually also like skinnier and longer people.
Exactly, yeah. And then you have the Pitta dosha, which is hot-headed,
fire,
prone to rage easily, prone to anger, prone to losing temper, and just...
I got some of that.
But also, I know we all do, but also like having the fire to be motivated too, so that like there's always good and
right
and bad aspects to it. And then there's the Kapha dosha, which is
Kapha, right?
Kapha. You're very like sluggish, tired. People tend to be overweight who are Kaphic. But I talked to this Ayurvedic medicine specialist at Bhakti Fest, which is a big spiritual festival that happens every year in September.
Joshua Tree,
yeah. And she was talking about how when you wake up in the morning, you're already in Kapha dosha, regardless of your regular constitution. She's like, because you're sluggish, you're just waking up, you're going from like sleep state to waking state. And so prior to talking to her, I was always like, pranayama, meditation, pranayama, breathwork, meditation, right? And it was definitely a good practice. But this Ayurvedic specialist says to get out of the kapha, you need to move your body. So I was like, okay, I'll give that a try. So moving your body first thing in the morning is very helpful. Whether it's a Kriya practice with Kundalini Yoga, or whether it's like Qigong, or even an asana practice.
Or it could be just the gym.
whatever works for you, or going for a walk around your neighborhood, going for a jog, whatever, anything that floats your boat.
Yeah.
But says, yes, to get out of that kapha state, you need to move your body. And so I've been incorporating that.
So what did she recommend? Is there a certain amount of time?
Work with what you have. She said, if you're on your way to work or whatever, then work with what you have, but give yourself enough time to feel like woken up and ready to go,
Yeah, and it sounds like part of it is getting back into the body, the soul re-entering, right?
And I notice in Asia, especially in Taiwan, because it's a Chinese thing, but these elderly people were up at the crack of dawn doing Qigong in the park.
Amazing.
And I'm like, no wonder they live so long here.
Yeah.
Because these like 80 octogenarian, 80-year-old pluses are doing like Tai Chi, Qigong in the park,
Right.
And that's their daily practice, So it was inspiring to see that, that this wasn't limited to any age group,
And right now, which type are you doing? Qigong? Are you doing a Kriya? What's your practice like?
I do a combination of stuff. I like asana, yoga asana. That's really helpful.
Like a Vipassana?
Yeah. Or no, asana meaning like poses in yoga, yoga poses.
Is that more like Hatha yoga, Vipassana yoga?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did practice Ashtanga at one point, but it takes about an hour and a half to do the entire Ashtanga practice, so it's only when I have more time that I can devote to that. But and then I'll sit down for pranayama, breathwork, and I do the four purifications, which is the Nadi Shodhana, the alternate nostril breathing, Kapalabhati, the
like breath of fire?
Yeah, short, but with Kapalabhati, it's more chest based, whereas breath fire is more diaphragm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, but it's still the same kind of movement, And then I do Agni Sardoti, which is involves breath retention, and you empty the belly, hold the breath on the exhale, and then just pump the belly as many times as you can on that held breath, and then let it go. Do that 3 times, and then finish it off with Ashvini Mudra, which is holding the root chakra. And on an inhale,
like tightening your sex organs and rectum?
Pretty much, yeah. And then on a held inhale, and doing that as many times as you can. On the held inhale, and then 3 times. And so, and then I'll throw in maybe Brahmari, the bee humming breath, and some Bastrika as well.
How do you do the second to last one you said?
Oh, the Brahmari?
Yeah.
It's just, I cover the eyes, cover the nostrils, the cheeks, and the lips, and then just with your thumbs, hold your ears shut, and you just take a big inhale with a bee humming sound, like until you've fully inhaled, and then you exhale with the same sound. And actually, so in India, Brahmari pranayama is used by singers a lot.
Oh,
it
wow.
helps with the voice and activating the throat chakra.
And that's all through the nose, right?
Yeah.
In and out through the nose. Oh, wow. Okay, I haven't tried that one.
Yeah,
I want to try that.
I learned all this when I did yoga teacher training at Mount Madonna, and a wonderful brother in our community, Billy Hovecki, recommended that I go there because he went there. And so in the summer of 2013, we road tripped there, and I did my yoga teacher training there. But yeah.
And where's that?
That is inland from Santa Cruz. And what makes that area special is that it was sacred to the Chumash people. And then also Baba Hari Das, who started it. He was Ram Dass's yoga teacher, and he was one of the few first people from India to teach yoga in the West. So yeah. And you get to camp amongst the redwoods while you're there, and it's just a magical place. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then what was the last one that you mentioned?
Yeah. Once I've done the pranayama practice, I just fall into meditation, and
okay.
I try to do an hour, but sometimes time doesn't allow it. So I just do as best as I can with the time frame I have. And
with your meditation, are you just focusing on your breath? Are you
Vipassana? I stick to Vipassana. Yeah.
Okay, so just which is like awareness of your body, right?
Everything, like, yeah, from even the tiniest little, like, ooh, that was a weird little itch. Oh, it's gone. So I feel like the more you practice Vipassana, the more you are aware of the concept of impermanence.
Okay, and with Vipassana, with that meditation, are you rolling your eyes up and in? Are you focusing on your third eye, or that's not necessary?
It's just go inwards.
Okay.
However comfortable you are, and just really focus on the sensations.
Okay.
Coming and the going, the coming and the going, the coming and the going. And even Master Chaya, my teacher at the Thai Buddhist temple, like he says, it's just like a flow of river. Like it just, your thoughts, I thought about dinner. Oh, okay, gone.
Right.
You know, yeah, but just observe how it just comes and goes.
Right.
Rather than get caught up in the monkey mind, as they say, you know.
Yeah, like not attaching to any thought, just letting it pass.
Yeah. Oh, I just thought about dinner. Oh, not thinking about it anymore. Oh, okay. You know? Yeah. You don't have to label it. You just observe it.
Yeah, and that's really powerful. Are you also like do you ever get pain like in your joints or your lower back?
Sometimes. Definitely less and less as I practice more and more, but it's not impossible for it to happen, you know, especially if like I've done a long hike or I've exerted myself, you know, sitting is harder because you got the, you know, sore muscles or whatever. And so, but yeah, I feel like observing helps, you know.
Does it ever fully subside for you?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Yeah. I one of the last podcasts I did, my friend Igor, he would do like 16-hour meditation days. And he said there's a moment when you just observe the pain where it completely goes away. And then there's like your hip clicks back in automatically, or something happens. And it was really fascinating to me to hear that, because most people don't go for that long of period with it.
Yeah.
And my dad's teacher right now, she's an enlightened woman from Australia, and that's all she wants her students to do is just observe the pain and let it just dissipate and subside.
Wow, that's a challenge to get to that level.
Yeah, it is. I mean, very few people that I know have reached those levels. Sure. It's a really amazing thing. Sure. So, but just the fact that that's possible and people are doing it is amazing to me.
I agree.
Because there's no way to logically explain that.
Yeah, there's some sadhus in India who've held their hand up for the last 20 years, you know.
Yeah.
It can't even come down
anymore.
It's
atrophied. It's completely atrophied up there.
It's frozen,
Yeah, that when I teach Kundalini yoga, that's what I tell my students is like that exact example. I'm like, there are sadhus in India, which sadhus are like the spiritual men that have let go of all their material possessions. They live on the street and they pray and chant and are completely taken care of. People just give them food and whatever they need. And so, you know, when you're holding your arms up for 3 minutes, you know, and one of those inspirations beforehand to inspire people and connect to that limitlessness, right, is like to remind them that there are people that are doing it for dozens of years.
Yeah, I know. And now I can't go back down anymore.
Right. I mean, they probably could put them in the surgical room and clear some of the
knots and the muscles,
the scar tissue out of there. But it would take a little bit. But just the fact that they're doing it is really fascinating. Yeah. So I think to wrap it up, what would be really interesting is to come back to yoga, right? And like what from all these years practicing it, like from the experiences you've had, from the teachers you've worked with, like what do you think yoga is for you, and like how can we help people understand what it really is? It's not just the stretching, right?
Yeah. So when I was really full into Ashtanga yoga, I would practice with Carrie Sobek and Jen Knox, who run an Ashtanga yoga studio here in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And there was one guy who showed up. His name was Alex. And when I talked to him, he was a much younger guy, and was super fascinating. And when I talked to him, he said that his journey was at the gym. He went to a yoga class at the gym at like EOS Fitness, but the teacher was not just an exercise-based yoga teacher. She was an actual like proper yogi who practiced, but she just happened to take extra hours teaching at a gym, right? And so I feel like if these gyms would also employ people who are proper yogis, not just using yoga as an exercise to, get us flat belly or something like that, then that could kickstart a whole segment of the population onto a spiritual practice, like it did with Alex, right?
Right.
Because it took, if he didn't have the teacher, her name was Marissa, she was also an Ashtanga yogi, but if he didn't have Marissa happen to teach at the gym, then he would have just continued being a gym bro,
Right.
But just because he met her and she happened to have her own practice,
That's beautiful.
was his kind of gateway in.
Right.
So, I think we really need to take yoga more seriously than just a simple, treat it as an exercise.
Well, traditionally, right, it is used to prepare the body for meditation. Right.
You can sit for long periods of time.
Right. You're like opening all the meridians. You're aligning all the chakras.
Yep.
You're allowing for that Kundalini energy, which is an energy wrapped around the sacrum, which is at the base of the spine, to rise up and activate all the activate all the chakras and open them up. And the movements are aligning the spine, tweaking little muscles, little adjustments, little tendons aligning, so that the body can sit upright for extended periods of time.
Exactly.
And it's really interesting because I know my parents growing up in Soviet Russia, they would do a lot of yoga.
Interesting.
In gym class and things like that. And I don't believe that they incorporated meditation, but being so close to India and that whole area, Asia, there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I thought that was really interesting. And I remember as a kid, I would naturally do, like bridges and all these poses that I didn't know what they were.
Right.
But they felt great, and they were
past life.
I was gonna say they were like past life.
You knew already.
Remembrance, right? And that brings up this story for those people that don't believe in past lifetimes. There's this. I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but there's this little boy that was born. I think he was like 2 or 3 years old. He was just learning to talk. And you can look this up on YouTube, and he remembered his past life, like very clearly.
Wow.
And he said to his parents, he said, I can tell you the exact ship or the exact plane that I was on that got shot down in World War II. I can tell you the platoon that I was in. Wow. And I can tell you exactly how I died. And the people that were part of his platoon were still alive.
Wow.
And they had a World War II veterans meeting, and they took him to it, and they confirmed that he was that man.
Wow.
Just in another body from that platoon. And
that's amazing.
Like they confirmed the plane, the all the details, right? Wow. And this kid remembered all of it, and that's the most convincing story that I've found so far, because not only did he remember, but there was people that knew him that could confirm that all the things he said was truth, and there was no way he could have known all that. Right. He couldn't have read that in a book. He couldn't have found it online. Wow. He had to have known that, you know.
That's amazing.
And that fascinated, like that was, to me, to my logical mind, to that monkey mind, that was like, okay, there's
more to it than what we think.
Yeah, and I don't need any more proof than that. Like that one example is all I need, you know. And I do have a tendency to want that proof.
Yeah.
And it helps my intuition
confirm
flow and navigate when I have that logical backing.
I agree. And another not as impressive but still a pretty cool example was my brother's daughter. Her name's Violetta. She's 6 years old now, but when she was 5, she just asked my brother, like, where does meat come from? And then my brother's like, well, animals are slaughtered. And of course, she was really, really, really upset by that. And that from that moment on, at age 5, she's like, I want to be a vegetarian. I don't want to eat meat. And so how does someone at 5 just decide, sorry, I'm not eating meat anymore? I think something happened in previous lives that led her to that, because, a child doesn't just randomly choose to not eat meat anymore. And I think, and to this day, it's been well over a year. She's 6 and doesn't touch meat. So
Yeah.
Only one in her family. I mean, I don't eat meat either, but me and her are the only ones in our immediate family who don't.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot that you can teach her.
Yeah, I'm the cool aunt already.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think there's a lot to it. I think there's ways to access those past lifetimes, and there's different practices and different modalities that can get you there.
Absolutely.
There's something called, for those that don't know, the Akashic Records, which is like all the records for millions of years that we've had as a universe or galaxy. And you can tap into it and see those past lifetimes. But the trippiest part to me, which is still hard to, I kind of trip out on it a little bit, is like their time doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So all those things are happening right now at the same time. So I've found that because it's all happening at the same time, I am going through experiences in this lifetime that are clearing aspects of those lifetimes.
Right.
So I'm in partnership and relationship with certain people to clear out lifetimes with them in the past. I meet certain people on these different parts of my journey because of different karmic ties that I had. Maybe I helped them out in that lifetime, and now they're repaying the favor, or vice versa. And then it seems like to me that there reaches a point where the karma almost has been cleared. For some people it's late in life, for some people it's earlier if they really tune into it. And then at that point, it seems like the karma, good or bad karma, shouldn't be acquired anymore if the goal is to transcend this reality.
I have read about that. Like when you reach a certain point on your journey toward samadhi or enlightenment or nirvana, whatever you want to call it, karma doesn't affect you anymore.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting, I guess, concept for me, because I don't necessarily know anybody personally in that space, at least that I am aware of. And it would be really interesting to see how that person exists.
Yeah, it would be really fascinating.
I wonder if, these enlightened beings, that's kind of where, like, fully enlightened, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where they're at. They can just be, and they don't really need to do anything. They can just like emit that frequency, help students with their field, and then just go on to whatever's next.
Exactly.
For them.
And in Buddhism, they call them bodhisattvas. When they come back, they choose to come back to Earth to continue teaching. Yeah. And
there's the rainbow-bodied Buddha, right? And what is that? Can you share a little bit about that?
I'm not 100% familiar, but I believe it's a form of bodhisattva who has foregone enlightenment to come back to the earthly realm and be a teacher. So
the rainbow body comes back.
Yes.
I wonder if that's related to the rainbow children that are coming in.
Possibly.
And maybe they have that.
Indigo.
Well, yeah, the indigos are like my generation, and then I guess there was the crystal children, and then there's the rainbow children coming in now, and those are all just labels, you know, and different ones have different activations in their DNA and in their crystalline structure that is already prepped and primed for their mission, right? And it's fascinating to me to think about that, you know. And for me, I was doing Reiki on trees and animals and people as a kid. I was, like I said, doing yoga and postures as a kid. So there's these different aspects that our soul remembers, right? And all that is really fascinating to me. So yeah, Marija, thank you so much for joining today. This was so much fun.
It really was. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I had a blast, and I hope, I know the listeners got a lot out of it. So this was the first one in the studio here in Vegas. So really, really exciting to utilize these microphones and all this.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for blessing us.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Blessings.
Blessings. Namaste.